Welcome to another episode of Animator Interviews. My name is Evan Vernon. I'm a contributor at Animation for Adults, as well as Animation Nights New York, or ANNY for short. Founded by Yvonne Grinkovich in 2015, ANNY is a monthly screening event and yearly festival that celebrates the very best in animation talent. Our artists come from all across the globe, and many have gone on to have their films featured at Cannes and other prominent festivals. In light of the coronavirus pandemic, ANNY is hosting a virtual screening this month. It's scheduled to take place Sunday, January 24th, and will feature talent from France, Israel, the UK, and of course, the United States. We have a special guest with us today. Samantha Lane from California is here. Sam earned her BA in animation from CalArts in 2019 and has been quite busy since graduation. She's worked as a story artist for Netflix, done animations for the FX show Cake, directed her own music video, and even done work for celebrated indie rock band Arcade Fire. Sam's animated short, Spell of the West, has been selected for numerous festivals and will be featured at ANNY's January screening. Set on a remote cactus farm, Spell of the West tells the story of Rose, a peaceful but spirited cowgirl whose world is turned upside down when a mysterious, axe-wielding man starts cutting down the cacti. With her animal friends at her side, Rose must find the Axeman and put a stop to his evil before the farm is lost. Beautifully scored and visually surreal, Spell of the West is a must-see for every animation fan. Today, Sam has graciously agreed to talk to us about the film and give us a little more information about her career. Sam, thank you for being here. I'll start with a question that we ask a lot of our creators. What got you into animation, and how did you enter the industry?
Okay, well, what drew me to animation? Basically, I was always into drawing. I doodled since I was in preschool. I'd make art. And then in ninth grade, I took a film class at my high school, which was awesome that they had that. And they taught us how to use Flash. And I was like, oh, now drawings can move and I can make my own movies doing the thing that I've been doing since preschool.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was like, I love the kind of control aspect of it, that you can design a completely new world and, you're not limited to location or number of actors or even, things can, it's animation. It can be cartoonish. Things can morph and look crazy and be fun. And so I just love that aspect of it. And then what was the second half of the question?
Basically, how'd you get into the industry? I understand you studied at CalArts, so I'm guessing that was kind of your in. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so CalArts has a portfolio day where it's quite stressful. You just basically leave your portfolio out on a table, and then all the executives come through for 2 hours and you're not allowed to be there, and they're just looking at your work. And then they do a big board with all the names of people they want to talk to, and everyone rushes to look at it at the same time. And it's just this insane moment. But basically, I got on a list for Netflix, and I met Ryan Kriego, who ended up hiring me on his show, which was just announced. It's called I Heart Arlo. It's a kids TV show, kind of like a comedy musical. It's going to be fun and great. So that's how I got in. Ryan was awesome. He believed in me.
And now you're working, I guess, doing contract jobs or full-time for the studio?
Yeah, right now. So I actually finished at Netflix in October. So right now I've just been doing freelance in between and hoping that the new year brings new opportunities.
Yeah, as we all do in light of everything that's going on. Thank you for kind of giving us a brief overview of your career trajectory there, Sam. If you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit about your visual style? I'm guessing that most of the people listening to this have already seen or will see Spell of the West, but it's kind of surreal. It vaguely reminds me of Adventure Time creator Pendleton Ward. I'm not sure if there's any connection there or not, but what's the backstory on that?
Yes, I have heard people say that before, and I certainly love his kind of whimsical and colorful style. Is definitely a big influence. But I actually kind of started out doing very Tim Burton-y stuff, and I was really into kind of grotesque looking, just black and white ink stuff. And then somehow I just graduated into color, I guess. And I ended up having a lot of fun with it. So yeah, I guess I'd describe it as like, people say Adventure Time and people say like psychedelic and whatever. I like organic lines, and that's also why my movie is kind of set in nature. Is I like drawing just things that aren't angular and not structured. I like movement in my line work.
Yeah. That's interesting, and that kind of leads me into my next question. I have a lot of questions about the story itself, because Spell of the West was very interesting and visually stunning. Could you tell us just a little bit about how the plot itself was conceived? Where did this kind of idea come from?
Yeah, so I've always kind of been interested in like different ways of talking about climate change, because I think there's a lot of very informative, types of storytelling out there, lots of documentaries and whatnot. But I was sort of interested in exploring more positive ways of discussing it, and more like fun and interesting and exciting ways that don't leave you feeling depressed necessarily, because that can be kind of a stagnating feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I was reading a book called the Songs of Trees by David Haskell, and it's basically it's a nonfiction book. Each chapter is a different tree. There's even coordinates that can tell you where to find the tree if you want to go see it for yourself. But it was basically like each tree talks to its surroundings. And, talk is used loosely. It's not necessarily like they're speaking in languages, but there's chemical reactions and interactions with animals, and it's all a big, system. And I was interested in, making that into more of the cartoonish version, where trees kind of are characters and animals are characters, and just playing with that idea to like create the environmental awareness that I was hoping to talk about.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it, now that I kind of think about the film in retrospect, makes a lot of sense. Rose is the only human character, aside from I guess this kind of axe guy who's looming in the background. I thought that your characterization of the trees and maybe just nature in general was very interesting, because there was this kind of like silent dialogue taking place between Rose and her animal friends and the trees that were communicating with her. It almost felt kind of spiritual. Was that the vibe you were going for, Sam?
Yeah.
Is there some sort of spiritual power that you're assigning to nature?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could describe it that way. Just, I guess you could also say it's just like a deep love of like, when you understand that these things are living and real, and that they're so much more complex than they let on, and nature as a thing that is living and in balance, and that you are a part of it, that humans are not separate from that. I guess it could be spiritual, and it's also just deeply like kind of peaceful, I think, as well. It's something you want to be a part of.
Yeah, the tone of the film definitely had that sort of like peaceful feeling to it. I have to ask, the person who made the music for this film, was this a friend of yours? Somebody that you hired? It sounded kind of synthy, but very ethereal, and it really kind of added to just the feeling that I guess you were going for.
That was Diego Gaeta. And I actually went to elementary school with him, and we didn't really hang out in elementary school, but then we ended up going to Cal Arts at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I remember that guy. What's he doing now? And what he was doing at the time was awesome. And so I always kind of like the kind of synthy, futuristic, slightly, and he's got like just a totally different approach to film scoring, which I really like. I just knew that it would be kind of unique sounding.
Yeah. Do you anticipate working with him again at some point in the future, or?
Yeah, well, so actually this Spell of the West is actually a few years old at this point, and I've made a film since then. And he scored that one as well. So yes, I have that actually will be coming out soon as well. Yes, I love working with him. He always kind of blows me away.
Well, your visual style blows us away too. But it's interesting to see how kind of, I guess, the sonic and visual elements of a piece, blend together to make something beautiful, Sam, I've just got a couple more questions for you here. I thought it was interesting that this more or less kind of dealt with I guess Rose struggling with this responsibility she had to shoulder, protecting the environment and finding this guy, but we never actually saw her do it. It was kind of a cliffhanger. So do you anticipate continuing this storyline? The only reason I'm asking is I felt like I wanted more. The characters were so rich, and you set the stage for, I think, a larger story. Has that been on your mind at all?
Yeah, I mean, originally when I made it, I was like, this is a pilot episode, and then I'm going to do a
Right.
whole series, and it's going to be great. And then, you start thinking of other ideas that are more exciting in the moment, and you pursue them for a while. So I think it's still very much in my back pocket, but there are other things that are also actually sort of environmentally driven as well that I'm currently working on.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. I may return to it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was just curious, if anything, because it was a great film. Do you see environmentalism kind of being this recurring theme that you want to come up in your work? Is that going to be kind of like who you are as an artist?
I think so, and maybe in less obvious ways as well. Like, I'm a big believer in kind of making situations feel, more like chewable by not really like shining a spotlight on them necessarily, but just incorporating them into a narrative, and that there are stakes that exist in the world that, are environmentally induced and that they can influence a narrative, and that can continue to be a theme, but not necessarily like the focus of the work, And I feel similarly about like feminist messages or something. Like, I'm a female creator. I believe in having female characters, but it's not like, the fact that they're female is not a part of the story. It's just that that is who they are, and this is the world they're living in. And so, yeah, that's the way that I foresee kind of dealing with the theme of environmentalism.
Do you think, are there any other artists who have kind of informed your storytelling, or is this just something that's kind of come out of thin air in your reading? I know you talked about that book you read.
Yeah, the reading for sure. Well, right now, I don't know if these are artists per se, but I'm really into like this AI podcast. I don't know if you ever heard of Lex Friedman, but so interesting. And it all sort of ties into environmentalism weirdly as well. And just like the idea that computers can solve issues faster than we can, and let's create things that think for themselves. And it's becoming very interesting to me. But in terms of like actual artists, let's see. I mean, again, I do love Pendleton Ward, and I love the way that Midnight Gospel looked. I thought that was rad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course I'm blanking on everyone right now, but I definitely appreciate a lot of people out there.
No, that's all right. And, it might be kind of a disservice to artists such as yourself to ask for those sort of comparisons, because everyone is inherently themselves at the end of the day. You're finding your own voice. I think you've already shown us your own voice through this film. Even though the aesthetic kind of seems a little Ward-esque, for lack of a better term, it's still very different in many ways. That's the Sam Lane aesthetic. I've got one last question for you, Sam. Thanks again for your time. You're a really young artist. You have so much ahead of you. Where do you picture yourself in 10, 20 years? And what would you most like to be remembered for as an artist? What would you like your legacy to be?
Wow. Well, I'll start with the short term, which is my New Year's resolution is to pitch a show like within the next couple months. Doesn't even matter what happens with it. I just want to like start rolling, get that train rolling. Because ideally I'd love to be a showrunner at some point. But in terms of like long term, what do I want to be known for? Oh my God.
It's a big question.
Yeah. I don't know. I think always I've just wanted to feel like I'm contributing to the world that I'm a part of. So if that's going to be animation, I want to help, I guess, tell stories that round out the animation genre and hopefully inspire people to also do animation. Yeah. And just make a good story in general. I'd love to get really good at writing and tell stories. That's the goal.
Yeah. I think that you've beautifully summed up the transformative power of not only animation, but storytelling in general. It can entertain us, but it can also teach us. to be better people. And it sounds like that's what your stories are doing in many ways. Sam, thank you so much for your time. For everyone listening in, if you'd like to see Spell of the West, it's going to be featured at Animation Nights New York's next screening. That's going to be on Sunday, January 24th. It's going to be available from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll include all the pertinent links in this interview so that you can access the event and see Sam's film. We'll also include any social media handles in the description if you'd like to follow Sam in her work. Sam, thank you again. Wish you all the best in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much.